Post 1. Am I the jerk for refusing to save my parents' cabin? I am a 38-year-old male, and if you met me now, you would probably assume I grew up pretty comfortable. I dress well, I own a condo in a good neighborhood, I have a boring but solid investment portfolio, and my job pays more than I ever thought I would see in my lifetime. People at work joke that I am the guy who always has a spreadsheet for everything, and that is not wrong. What nobody sees is that I learned to be that careful because when I was a teenager, I watched my entire future quietly disappear in front of me and got told I was ungrateful for even noticing. I grew up in a small town with parents who wanted to look successful more than they wanted to actually be stable. My dad ran a family business that barely made money, but he loved playing boss. My mom did the books and tried to smooth everything over. I have one older brother, Chris, who was always the star. He got the new things first, the extra lessons, the big parties. The narrative was that Chris was going places and I was the easy one who would be fine with less. The one person who really seemed to see me was my grandfather, my dad's father. He was quiet, practical. He taught me how to fix things, how to read contracts, how to save. When I was around 12, he told me very seriously that he had set up an education fund for me and Chris, and that there was money in there earmarked for my college so I would not be trapped in the family business like my dad. He used to say, "You are going to get out. That is my gift to you." He died when I was 16. That was awful in itself, but it was also the moment where everything shifted. My parents started talking about estate stuff in low voices in the kitchen. I heard probate and cabin and taxes, and then, eventually, it will all work out. The boys will understand. The cabin is important here. My grandparents had a small place on a lake that we went to every summer. It was not fancy at all, more like a glorified shack with a dock, but it was the one place that ever felt peaceful. Granddad always joked that when he was gone, the cabin and the education money were my ticket out. After he died, we went to the cabin less and less. Dad said he was too busy with the business. Chris moved away for college, fully paid for with scholarships, according to my parents. I did not question it then. When I was 18 and applying for universities, the guidance counselor helped me fill out financial aid forms. I came home with a list of what we would need: tax slips, bank information, and details of any education savings. I remember sitting at the kitchen table while my mom flipped through the papers and got this tight look on her face. "There is no education fund anymore," she said. "We had to use it a few years back when the business had that bad year." I just stared at her. I said, "But Granddad told me he set aside money. For us. For me." Dad came in at that point and launched into a speech about how sometimes families have to make sacrifices, how I should be grateful they kept the business afloat because that kept a roof over my head, how the money was not yours, it was the family's. He said if I really wanted college, I could take loans like everyone else and work my way through, and that would build character. I remember feeling like I was being dramatic for even being upset. I went to my aunt after that, my grandfather's sister, and mentioned the money. She got this strange look and said, "Your dad told us he was keeping that safe for you boys." That was the first moment I realized it was not some unavoidable emergency, but a choice. I confronted my parents again and got the same lines. Ungrateful, selfish. Did I want them to lose the house? Did I think I deserved more than my brother? Eventually, I shut up about it because arguing did nothing, and I still needed somewhere to sleep. I took out loans. I picked the cheapest school I could get into and still ended up dropping out for a while to work because the debt was suffocating. Fast forward 20 years. I did get my degree eventually at night while working. I found a niche in a technical field, moved cities, and worked my way into a very good salary. I lived like a student even when I did not have to, paid off everything, and built my own version of the security I was promised as a teenager and never got. I went low contact with my parents in my 20s. Not no contact, just polite distance. Holidays if I could not avoid it, the occasional call. I told myself I had forgiven them because it was easier than carrying that anger around all the time. A few weeks ago, they asked if I could drive out for a family meeting. That phrase already made my stomach knot, but my dad said it was about the future of the cabin and making sure your inheritance is protected. Hearing the word inheritance out of his mouth almost made me laugh, but I went. We sat at their dining table, same as always. My mom had a folder of papers. My dad started in with his earnest voice, telling me the business had hit a rough patch again. The bank was being unreasonable, interest rates were killing them, all the usual. Then he slid a document across the table and said, "We need you to help with the cabin loan." That was the first time I heard that there even was a cabin loan. He explained very calmly that after my grandfather died, they had put the cabin fully in their names for simplicity and borrowed against it over the years to support the business. Now the bank was threatening foreclosure. If the cabin went, they would have nowhere to go, and our family legacy would be lost. He said that since I was doing so well, it was only fair that I either take over the loan, co-sign a refinancing, or just bridge them with a lump sum. He actually said, "You will get it all back anyway when we are gone." I asked as evenly as I could, "So the cabin was supposed to be partly mine in the will, right? Did Granddad know you were going to borrow against it?" My mom flinched. My dad got offended and said I was disrespecting my grandfather's memory by implying he would not want them to survive. He brushed right past the question about the will. I felt like I was 18 again, sitting at that kitchen table. I asked about the education fund. I said out loud that I knew it had been drained to prop up the business and pay for Chris's wedding. My dad went straight to anger. He said that was ancient history, that we all agreed back then, that I had benefited from the roof over my head, and that bringing it up now was cruel. I said no. I did not raise my voice. I just said, "I am not taking on your debt. I am not signing anything. I will not be involved in the cabin loan." My mother started crying, full-body sobs. She said, "We did our best. We were young. We made mistakes. But this is your chance to show you are better than us." My dad said if I walked away from this, I was walking away from the family completely. He told me not to expect to be included in anything else they did with their assets. I drove home feeling shaky and guilty, and also furious. I keep thinking of teenage me who just wanted a chance, and how easily they took it. Now that I finally have money, the first thing they do is try to hook it into the same sinkhole that swallowed my college fund and the cabin equity. Part of me feels completely justified in saying no. Another part hears my dad's voice in my head, calling me selfish and ungrateful. I do not know if I am repeating their patterns or breaking them. I know this is long already, and I am probably at the character limit, so I can post more details in a second part if needed. But for now, am I the jerk for refusing to save the family cabin when my parents already used my college fund and inheritance to bail out their business once before? Comment 1. You are not the jerk. They did not use your college fund, they stole it. Now they want to repeat the pattern with your adult money. You are allowed to break that cycle. Do not sign anything and consider going fully no contact if they keep pushing. Comment 2. NTA at all. Your grandfather clearly wanted you to have options, and they sabotaged that. The cabin is already gone in every way that matters. Protect yourself and your future. If anything, talk to a lawyer about what was supposed to happen with that will. Update 1. I did not really expect this to get much attention, but I posted and then went to bed. When I woke up, my phone was full of notifications, both from here and from my family. It felt like two different worlds. On my screen, strangers were telling me I was not crazy. In my messages, my parents were doubling down on every single thing people warned me about. A few people asked for more background on the college fund and what exactly my grandfather intended with the cabin. I will try to answer clearly. From what I remember and what my aunt later confirmed, my grandfather had separate accounts set up for education. Chris and I each had money earmarked for college. It was not millions or anything, but enough that tuition at a state school would have been covered, with maybe loans for living expenses. Granddad talked to me directly about it. He said, "I could not give that to your father. He would just put it into the business. This is for you." After he died, everything went kind of opaque. My parents would say, "The lawyer is handling it," or, "You do not need to worry about that. We are your parents." I did not have access to any of the paperwork. I only know what my aunt told me, which is that Granddad believed each of us would get an education fund and that the cabin would eventually be split between my dad and his sister, with a plan that eventually I would get a share. Chris went off to school 2 years before I graduated. My parents insisted it was all scholarships. I believed them until I saw one stray bank statement with the education fund name and a much lower balance than what Granddad had told me. When I asked about it, my mom grabbed the paper out of my hand and said it was grown-up stuff. That was the same year the business almost went under, and somehow, magically, Chris still had everything he needed. I was working part-time at a grocery store and handing over half my pay for gas and family bills. So when I say they used my college fund, I am not guessing. I watched the money evaporate while everything for my brother stayed the same. It felt like they cashed in my future to prop up my dad's ego and my brother's plans. After my original post, I texted my parents to say I was not comfortable having further conversations about the cabin in person or on the phone. I said, from now on, please put anything you want to ask me about the cabin in an email so we all have a record. I kept it as neutral sounding as I could. My dad replied almost immediately. His first text was, "Wow, you really think of us as enemies, do you?" Then another one. "We made sacrifices for you your whole life, and this is how you treat us." Then, "If you are going to bring lawyers into this, we can bring lawyers into this too." I had not mentioned lawyers at all in that message. My mom did not text at first. She called. I let it go to voicemail. Hearing her voice crack in the recording still made my stomach twist. She said things like, "We were just asking for a bridge, not a handout." And, "Your father is not well. The stress is making his chest hurt." And, "You know we always intended for you to have the cabin one day. Why are you being so literal?" That phrase stuck with me. So literal. As if being literal about legal ownership of a house and a loan is a personality flaw. Later that day, my brother Chris finally weighed in. We have not been close for years. He lives about an hour from my parents and has always been the one to help Dad at the business in ways that somehow never seemed to cost him anything. He sent a long message that read like a script my parents coached him on. He said I was obsessed with money and that it was ugly how I kept bringing up the college fund. He admitted in a sideways way that yes, the business had used a lot of family resources back then, but said that without that, we all would have been on the street. He said I had no idea what my parents went through to keep us housed and fed. He also threw in, "You are better off than all of us now. Why does it hurt you to help?" As if my adult financial stability appeared from thin air and not from years of doing without. Seeing so many comments point out that this was not normal or reasonable kind of messed with my head. Part of me kept thinking, maybe they remember things differently. Maybe I am missing something. Then I would reread my dad's messages telling me I was cruel for not signing a loan I had no part in creating. And I would feel that same cold clarity I felt at the table when I said no. Some people asked if I have any documentation about the will or the cabin. I do not have the will itself. I was a teenager then, and they never showed me anything. What I do have is text from my aunt confirming that my grandfather intended for me to have a share, and that she was surprised when the cabin ended up fully in my parents' names. She said she did not fight it at the time because it felt like stirring up trouble. That seems to be the chorus of my family. There were also comments telling me to get ahead of this legally in case my parents try to pull anything shady with my name. I will admit that had not even occurred to me. I assumed saying no was enough. Then I thought about the folder of papers my mom had at the table and how quickly my dad tried to get me to just look over the loan terms. The idea that they might try to involve me without my consent made my chest get tight. I have an appointment with a lawyer next week. I feel guilty about that sentence even as I type it. These are my parents. But they are also people who took money that was explicitly meant for my education and used it in ways I never agreed to. They are people who put a property into their own names that was supposed to be partly mine and then used it as an ATM. They are now demanding I rescue them or be cut off. I keep looping back to my dad's line at the table. If you walk away from this, you are walking away from the family. I do not know if that is supposed to be a threat or a promise. Part of me is terrified of being the son who let his parents lose their home. Another part is quietly relieved at the idea of not having to carry their chaos anymore. Right now, I am not paying anything toward the cabin, I am not signing anything, and I am insisting on written communication only. To them, this is apparently a huge betrayal. Given how intense the backlash has already been, Am I the jerk for refusing to step in financially and for telling my parents I will only discuss the cabin by email from now on? Comment 1. Still NTA. You are not doing anything to them. You are simply refusing to be exploited again. Moving conversations to email is smart, not cruel. It protects you from being tricked or misrepresented. Stay firm and talk to that lawyer. Comment 2, they are trying to make their poor planning and dishonesty your emergency. You did not put the loan on the cabin. You did not drain your own education fund. They did. Let the consequences land where they belong. Update 2. So, a lot has happened since my last update, and I feel like I am living in two timelines at once. In one, I am the bad son who abandoned his parents in their hour of need. In the other, I am a grown man finally admitting to himself that what happened at 18 was not just a rough patch, it was theft. First, the extended family got involved. I should have seen that coming. It started with my aunt, my dad's younger sister. She texted, "Your mom is very upset. Maybe you could compromise just so they do not lose the cabin." That word again, cabin, as if it is this sacred object that matters more than how it was paid for. Then I got a Facebook message from a cousin I have not seen in 10 years saying, "Everyone is talking about how you are letting your parents sink after everything they did for you. Apparently, my parents have been telling people that I am refusing to help with a small temporary loan, even though I am rolling in money. Conveniently, they leave out the part where the loan is attached to a property that was supposed to be partly mine and where they already consumed my education fund. There is a pattern to the messages. They all use the same phrases. After everything they did for you, you know the business kept you fed. They are too old to start again." One uncle even wrote, "You are ruining their retirement out of spite." Nobody mentions my grandfather or what he wanted. A few relatives are quieter. One cousin texted, "I know some of what went on when we were kids. You are not crazy." Then immediately followed it with, "Please do not show my name to anyone. I cannot be involved." That sums it up. Now for the escalation that everyone here warned me might happen. A few days after I told my parents to use email only, I got a thick envelope from the bank that holds the cabin loan. At first I thought it was just junk mail or a generic offer. Then I saw my full name printed under borrower contact information. Inside, there was a letter thanking me for my continued cooperation regarding the mortgage on the cabin, referencing a family consent and guarantee that I had supposedly signed. There was also a notice that all borrowers and guarantors would be jointly responsible if the loan defaulted. My stomach dropped. I did not sign anything. I had not even seen these documents before. I called the number on the letter and got a customer service person who pulled up the account. They confirmed that my name was listed as a guarantor based on a form submitted last year. When I said I had never signed any such document, there was a pause. Then the person said they would have to escalate it to their fraud department and ask for copies of the signed paperwork. They emailed me scanned copies. Seeing my own signature at the bottom of a guarantee form made my skin crawl. It was not even a good attempt. The style was vaguely similar to how I used to sign my name in high school, not how I sign it now. The address they used for me was 2 apartments ago. I realized my parents must have used old information they had on file. The form itself was labeled something like Family Support Acknowledgement. Buried in the middle was a clause that said I agreed to backstop the loan in the event of default. There was a handwritten note in the margin that looked like my mother's writing, saying son is fully aware and supportive. I do not know if I have ever felt rage like that in my life, not even at 18. Back then I felt small and powerless. This time it was like something in me finally snapped into place. They were not just asking for help, they had already tried to tie me to their mess without even telling me. I took a screenshot of the fake signature and sent it to my dad with a very short message. Explain this. He did not reply for hours. When he finally did, it was a wall of text about how I was overreacting, how the bank had confusing forms, how he had thought I had given verbal consent years ago to be there for the family if needed, and that this must be some misunderstanding. He said, if you sick lawyers on your own parents over a paperwork mistake, that says more about you than us. My mom sent a separate message saying, your father only did that because he knew you would help if you understood the situation. He thought he was saving you from stress. That sentence honestly made me laugh out loud. Forging my name on a financial document is not saving me from stress. I showed everything to the lawyer I had booked with. I brought my aunt's texts about the will, the bank letter, the fake signature, the old messages from my parents about the business. The lawyer did not act shocked, which was both reassuring and depressing. They said very calmly that what my parents did is serious, that the cabin's title history and the way the will was handled should be examined, that trying to attach me to the loan this way could be considered fraud. They also said something that stuck with me. You are not creating a problem by reacting to this. The problem already exists. You are just deciding not to be the silent victim of it. The lawyer is contacting the bank's fraud department formally. They are also starting the process of getting the probate records from when my grandfather died. I do not know what we will find yet, but the lawyer said there is a good chance things were not done according to the will. The guilt is still there, in flashes. I saw a picture my mom posted on social media of the cabin dock at sunset with a caption about holding on to memories while we still can. There were 50 comments from people saying things like, "So beautiful, I hope your sons appreciate what you have done," and "You raise such good boys, they will not let you down." Reading that made my chest tighten. Then I remembered that while they were taking that sort of picture, I was working double shifts and eating instant noodles in a tiny apartment because the education fund that could have helped me was gone. I am still not paying anything. I am still not signing. The main change is that I am not just sitting here hoping it all blows over. I have a lawyer, the bank is aware something is wrong, and I am willing to dig into what happened after my grandfather died, even if it makes me the villain in their story. Comment 1. Good on you for taking the bank letter straight to a lawyer. That fake signature is not a misunderstanding. It is a deliberate attempt to drag you into their debt. Keep every message, every document, and let the professionals handle it. Comment 2. The way your family keeps talking about memories and legacy while quietly rewriting legal reality is really telling. They want the emotional optics of being good parents without any of the actual responsibility. You are right to protect yourself. Update 3. I did not really understand what breaking point meant until this week. I always pictured some big dramatic scene. In reality, it was me sitting in a quiet conference room with a lawyer, listening while they read parts of my grandfather's will out loud, and realizing that almost every scary story I told myself about, maybe I misremembered, was just me trying to protect people who had not protected me. My lawyer got the probate records. They slid a photocopy of the will across the table and pointed to the section about the cabin. There, in black and white, it said that my grandfather left the cabin, jointly to my son Daniel and my grandson, my full name, in equal shares. There was also a note that my aunt would receive a cash bequest instead of a share of the property, which explained why she never pushed back about ownership. I stared at that sentence for a long time. It felt like my grandfather was reaching forward through time and putting a hand on my shoulder. I was not imagining it. I was meant to have half that cabin. Then the lawyer showed me a later document. About 6 months after my grandfather died, my parents had filed a petition to simplify the estate by transferring the cabin fully into my father's name, citing management convenience and claiming that I agreed that beneficial interest would remain with the family unit. I was 17 then. I had no idea any of this was happening. "Did you sign this?" the lawyer asked. I looked at the attached consent form. The signature on it was not mine. It was a messy scribble that looked like someone trying to copy how I signed school permission slips back then. The address they used was our house. My date of consent was a day I knew for a fact I had been on a school trip in another city because I still have photos. "No," I said. "I did not sign that. I did not know any of this." The lawyer nodded. "Then we are dealing with a pattern. Your parents misrepresented your consent to alter the title after your grandfather died, and they misrepresented your consent again on the bank guarantee. In both cases, they benefited. You lost. They laid out my options. I could do nothing and hope the bank accepted that the current guarantee was invalid, or I could take formal action to unwind the fraud related to the cabin, which could include petitioning the court to correct the title to reflect my rightful half ownership, seeking damages for the unauthorized use of my share as collateral, and reporting the forged signatures to the appropriate authorities. The word authorities made me feel sick. The idea of my parents facing criminal charges, even for something this serious, still twists my stomach. I told the lawyer that. They did not pressure me either way. They just said, "You are in the position you should have been in at 17. The difference is that now you have information and representation. You get to decide what to do with that." After that meeting, I sat in my car for a long time just breathing. I thought about teenage me in the grocery store uniform, watching my brother pack his car for college. I thought about my dad saying, "There is no money for you," while apparently filing papers in court claiming I had agreed to give up my rights. I thought about the fake guarantee form on the cabin loan. That was when something in me finally tipped. I went home and wrote an email to my parents. No more texts, no more calls. Just one very careful email that my lawyer helped me draft, though the feelings in it were all mine. I told them I had seen the will. I told them I knew the cabin was meant to be half mine and that they had filed paperwork saying I agreed to give that up when I did not. I attached a copy of the fake guarantee with the forged signature and said plainly that I had never signed it. Then I laid out two options. Option one, they could sign over full title of the cabin to me and cooperate with the bank in removing my name from any and all loan documents. In exchange, I would work with the bank and my lawyer to restructure the debt in a way that would not involve criminal charges. I said I would be willing to pay a modest sum to help them relocate somewhere they could afford, and that I would not pursue them for what they took from my education fund. Option two, if they refused, I would instruct my lawyer to pursue every legal avenue available. That would include challenging the old title transfer, reporting the forged documents to the bank's fraud team, and, if needed, to law enforcement. I said, "I will no longer protect you from the consequences of your choices." Their response was instant and intense. My dad replied first, subject line, "How dare you?" It was pure Darvo. He accused me of attacking them, of fabricating drama, of trying to steal the family home out from under your sick father. He insisted that my grandfather never intended for me to actually have part of the cabin, that the will language was symbolic, and that the real agreement was always that the property stays with the parents while they are alive. He called my email blackmail and said, "If you go through with this, you will be dead to us." My mom sent her own email a few hours later. Hers was quieter but somehow worse. She wrote about how she carried me, how she sat up with me when I was sick, how she made my lunches. And then, in the same breath, she said, "You are killing your father with stress. He had chest pains after reading your message. If something happens to him, I hope your fancy lawyer can comfort you." Neither of them addressed the actual facts. Neither denied that the signatures were fake. They just tried to make me feel like I was the one doing something unforgivable by daring to name what they had done. Extended family joined in again, too. My aunt sent a short, icy email saying, "I did not know about the signature back then, but dragging this into court will destroy your parents. Think about whether that is something you want on your conscience." A cousin commented on my mom's latest cabin sunset photo. "Some kids forget who changed their diapers as soon as they get a paycheck." I stayed out of the public stuff, but I saw it. Underneath the guilt, I feel something like relief. For the first time, I have said out loud to their faces, and not just inside my own head, "You stole from me." For the first time, I am not backing down the second they cry or rage. My lawyer has already sent a formal letter to their attorney outlining our position and the evidence. The bank's fraud department is cooperating. Things are in motion now. Comment 1. This is exactly what people meant when they told you to get the will and the probate documents. Your grandfather tried to protect you and they undid his wishes behind your back. You are not stealing anything. You are finally claiming what was always yours. Stay the course. Comment 2. So you are basically threatening to make your elderly parents homeless unless they hand over their house. I get that they messed up, but this feels extreme. There must be some middle ground where you help them without dragging lawyers and fraud charges into it. OP reply, I offered them a middle ground. That was option 1 in my email. They can transfer the title like my grandfather intended, and I will help them relocate without involving criminal charges. They are the ones insisting on keeping full control of an asset that was supposed to be half mine, while also trying to tie me to their debt with forged signatures. I am not kicking them onto the street for fun. I am refusing to quietly subsidize their choices anymore. Update 4. If Update 3 was the breaking point, this one feels like the aftermath of an explosion. Things did not magically resolve in one dramatic courtroom scene, but the shape of my life has shifted, and it is not shifting back. After the formal letters and the bank's investigation, my name was removed from the loan. The bigger issue was the cabin title. We filed to challenge the old transfer based on the forged consent. A settlement conference was set. In the room, my parents mostly spoke through their lawyer. The mediator laid out the facts. The will left the cabin jointly to my father and me. The later transfer relied on a consent that appears forged. The bank removed me as guarantor. Courts go by what is written, not by claim symbolism, the mediator said. We settled on terms close to what I had proposed. The title was corrected. I own the cabin outright now. In exchange, I agreed to a structured payment that lets my parents clear some unrelated debts and put a deposit on a small rental. Business debts remain theirs. There is a clause barring harassment or misrepresentation about the property, with remedies if they violate it. Walking out, I felt more exhausted than triumphant. Family reaction was harsh. Posts about enduring injustice, relatives calling me ungrateful, others privately saying they understand but cannot say so publicly. I blocked a few, filtered keywords, and kept my distance. Practically, I changed the locks and started repairs. The first time I stood on the dock with keys that were actually mine, I cried from relief. It felt like my grandfather finally got to give me what he intended. I did not want a war. I wanted them to do the right thing before it came to this. They chose not to. Holding this boundary is the first real act of loyalty I have been able to show the kid my grandfather wrote into his will. Comment 1. This is exactly the outcome your grandfather tried to set up. You enforced his written wishes and protected yourself from further fraud. Your parents still got help and a place to live. More mercy than they showed you. Comment 2. I am glad the court and bank took it seriously. You set clear options, gave them chances, and when they refuse, you followed through. That is accountability, not cruelty. Enjoy your cabin and keep the boundaries. Final update, 9 months later. 9 months is long enough for habits to change. The legal piece is done. My parents moved to a small rental. The business dissolved. I own the cabin outright. I've repaired the roof and dock, invited friends, and let the place become a home instead of a monument to what went wrong. Payments to my parents run automatically. I do not dwell on them. We have no direct contact. Their public narrative paints me as greedy. Some relatives quietly say they understand. I have stopped trying to make other adults be brave. I set up a small education fund for a cousin's daughter. Closing a loop my grandfather tried to start cleanly. Therapy is helping me unlearn the reflex to keep everyone else comfortable at my expense. The guilt still flickers, but it is not in charge. The cabin is no longer leverage or debt. It is a small, weathered house on a lake that my grandfather wanted me to have. I spent years measuring my life by what was taken at 18. Now I measure it by what I have built, and by choosing the version of me my grandfather believed in. Not the story my parents kept trying to force on me, kept trying to force on me, kept trying to force on me.